Good, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Health and Human Services Council Committee. Today is April 5th, 2023, and
Mic test, mic test.
good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. Tonight is April 5th, 2023, and welcome to the Health and Human Services Council Committee. We're at the Everett City Council chambers, and tonight the public is welcome to attend in person or watch live online, but we will not be we will not allow for public comment during the meeting tonight. And the second agenda item is for council or committee discussion on priorities and future agenda items discussion. So Julie, if you'd like to take it away, that'd be great.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. I am Julie Willey. I'm the Community Development Director. And let's see, I guess I advance my slide and let you know a little bit about Community Planning and Economic Development Department, which is 3 different divisions that work together in one department. My team is the Community Development division of that team, and we intersect in a lot of different ways regarding the health and quality of life for our community, planning and economic development, and the prosperity and future. And I mention this primarily because as we go through these slides, you'll see a lot of intersections where my team works with a variety of different agencies, different partners, different city departments, different intergovernmental departments, and so we're a bit eclectic in that way, and it also will help you understand why sometimes I come to your other committee meetings to talk about different topics, as well as why sometimes as you determine what your action plan is for the future, why I might not be here at all, and maybe someone from the planning department might step in or someone from my team might be here to be giving specific updates. So with that, I will put my glasses on so I can make sure I remember everything. Another thing I'll mention is that the Community Development Division was created in 2019. So prior to that, we had planning and community development. And so some of the functions of my team were a part of that department, and some of them were a part of the Office of Neighborhoods, and some of them were part of the public safety, the Safe Streets initiative that was done following the Community Streets Initiative. I'll also mention that I was a part of the Community Streets Initiative as a coordinator beginning in 2015. So my background before coming to the city of Everett does include the partnerships and the strategies that the Community Streets Initiative brought to the city. Back before we talked about things like homelessness and opioid crisis and fentanyl, we've learned a lot in those last 8 years, but I did want you to have that background so you know kind of an overview of that as well. I gave this presentation to my staff because oftentimes they're confused how they overlap, and I gave it to our director team so that because oftentimes they were confused why we were intersecting so often with many different departments, and so I just kind of put it into 3 different buckets. And so some of these things you'll be very familiar with, and some might feel new. So the first one is what we call community development, and that's really the funding and the compliance for the federal, state, local, funding that we have and that we have to organize. It includes home funds that we have in partnership with the county, as well as affordable housing tax credit funds. And so that requires a lot of, obviously, governmental processes and requirements and monitoring and reporting and, again, compliance. And so we have a team of 2 that primarily do that, and I actually have an org chart that I'll show you after this slide. The other one is the human needs funding, which I think you are all also very familiar with, as you do provide resolution for all of these funding resolutions and ensure that the recommendations that come forward you approve. And then the final kind of bucket underneath that category is our CHIP program, which is the Community Home Improvement Program, which provides loans to low-income residents for anything from really mid to minor home repair, as well as emergency home repair. And really, if you think about it, it's a homeless prevention program for our homeowners in our community who maybe have a faulty roof or a sewer line or something, and this low-interest loan can really help them out. And so our CHIP program is underneath that bucket, and it is also funded through CDBG and Home Fund, so it's like a subrecipient almost of those funds. Yes, please, questions anytime.
So, Julie, are all those opportunities under the CHIP is loans? Do we have anything where we just grant them?
Not,
we have any
not at this
capability?
time. The CHIP program's
Okay.
been around for like 45 years.
Right.
So that isn't something that
Okay.
yet has been created under.
It would be kind of nice. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. I know I have to not go into my analysis of, yes, if we can give people loans, but we have so few homes that people can afford to buy, so that would be great. And having more housing that would be affordable would also be great. So the second bucket is our homeless response, and that kind of is about coordinating programs and systems and working in particular with encampment coordination. Encampment response really touches a lot of our city departments, and so our homeless response coordinator tries to help with efficiencies and tries to bring those different teams together to make sure that we have just clear policies that we're working on, and it's like I said, it's a lot of work, and in addition to that, it's also partnering with other jurisdictions like Burlington Northern or Department of Transportation and such. That position also focuses on some of our alleviating homelessness projects. Again, things that you've heard of recently because we're asking to use ARPA funds for them, but is the pallet program, things like day center, shelter, meal programs, faith partners and things like that. And just trying to work together collectively to understand which organizations are doing what and how can we at the City of Everett support them and facilitate them staying in touch, being coordinated, and letting us know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And then the last part is the community response and just trying to be, one of the things we've always tried to ensure is balanced approach, and so making sure that we have opportunities, tools, support for our businesses and our residents, and so making sure that we have a neighborhood presence, making sure, we update our website to have things that are available. And it's a work in progress. This position has only been here for 1 year, so we're making good strides. And then the third bucket is the community support bucket, and that's really where we are helping the people, the individual residents in our community. So that includes where we have our social work and mental health professionals and outreach programs, and also our case management program. And I'll go into a bit more detail in the future slides. So this is just a quick overview. The buckets are kind of represented underneath me, and then the teams are below. And as you can see, under the community support buckets, we're in the process in 2023 of bringing on quite a few new staff. So it's an exciting, growing time.
Those are all ARPA funded?
Those are ARPA funded, yeah. So, yes.
Can you tell me again what the MHP stands
Oh,
for?
sure. A mental health professional.
Got it.
Yeah, it's just kind of a blanket term. The way we are using it, you could probably say it's short, or lowercase m, case H, lowercase p, because they may be outreach workers or they may be licensed mental health therapists. So that whole range, depending on the position, depending on who we can get to apply and who can hire. We certainly have a job description and a hope for licensed therapists for a couple of our positions, but we also understand that it's a hard market, and having a kind of an outreach worker that has a mental health background, maybe human services background or psychology background or case management experience or something could potentially make up for that. So I just kind of wanted to bring this back as a point of reference. Back in 2021, when we learned we did have ARPA funds to serve as a tool to assist with our increased unsheltered population, we did a lot of internal work as well as working with kind of external partners to identify the buckets of work and make sure that we understood what the city of Everett may be able to do with our limited funds and with our limited resources. And we kind of identified programs and services that fell underneath this bucket. And so we distilled them into those key areas. And then in 2023, we really just kind of added a couple buckets to reflect the whole community development division, and just, slightly made a couple changes. And then now I'll kind of walk through each of these buckets independently.
Great.
Sometimes I talk too fast, so tell me to slow down if I...
All good.
All right, so the first one, and I apologize for our council members who have heard this before, perhaps in our previous council meetings last year and throughout our ARPA updates. But for anyone else that's listening and might want an update, here we go. So the community support team is essentially being created to help until we get perhaps more funding and more opportunities through 988 legislation, through our behavioral health reforms, through new programs that may be coming down the pike that we are trying to learn about and become more engaged in. And so we really see this as an opportunity to help strengthen what we're dealing with right now, while we're figuring out how to continue that in the future. So we're essentially going to go from having one kind of embedded social work team to having 3, going from 2 social workers to essentially 6. The 2 will remain within our police department, and then 2 will be working alongside the fire and EMS department, and then we'll place 2 in the library. And so, yeah, it's exciting. We're in the process right now of interviewing for those positions. I know that you've heard from many different sectors that it's hard to hire. So we don't have a lot of applicants, and so we're hoping. We don't have a lot of applicants for our fire MHPs, and so we're going to do some creative marketing in hopes that we can attract great people. The second thing that we added last July, we were able to bring a case management coordinator, and the case management coordinator will kind of serve as a center hub for our social worker teams, and that position kind of understands, we'll be able to tell if we're all working with the same person, or they'll be able to tell, maybe they'll be the one that learns about the resources in the community and then filter that out to our MHPs so that they don't have to take the time to build all that understanding, really create a unified team as well, so that when the social workers are out in the field and they come across somebody that really needs more social or more case management, more opportunities for support, that we'll be able to connect them to our case management kind of program, which will also include 2 full-time case managers from a contractor that we are currently also in the process of firming up. I guess we're in that RFP process, and sometimes I don't know exactly what I can talk about, but nonetheless, we hope by July we will have a contract, which is something we will bring obviously to you all to have to approve that contract. But that will enable us to have 2 staff, not us, but to contract for 2 case managers who can support the work of the social workers and provide more intensive case management. Also, they may be able to support some of our other programs, like the people living at the pallet shelter at EGM, and if we're able to establish some type of day center to be available as a resource there as well as being someone who can connect individuals to other service providers or other people that are providing case management in our city, because they're not going to be able to do everything, but we have some great partnerships with LEAD, with HOST, with PATH. There's all these acronyms of programs that exist of people that are trying to really help this population. The other thing that team will do is kind of, we called it Chart 2.0. Chart was a opportunity for service providers to come together to try and do care coordination, and we are relaunching that to try and really identify individuals that if we work better together, perhaps we can see better outcomes for them, as well as our own city teams who are working, who are affected in our parks and in our transit system, and like we said, the library and fire and police. So it's a way to potentially help coordinate that effort as well. So, and then I just kind of wanted to make note that in addition to the things that we're doing individually, that the city is a recipient of the opioid distributor funds, and we are participating loosely with the Snohomish County MAC group. The county has a whole opioid department almost, or the health district has an opioid team, and they've been doing really great work while the rest of us, I think, were doing COVID. They got to continue to do the opioid work because it's such a huge problem in our county and in our country. And so we are participating, and we don't yet know how the City of Everett funds would be used. We'll probably get about 17 million, $4.5 million over the course of 17 years. Get my numbers mixed up. Yeah, I know, darn it. 17 million, yeah, that would have made a big difference. But it's about the first year is 150, the second year is $158,000. So slowly but surely, not a huge, yeah. But nonetheless, it may help us to sustain some of these programs that if they're pilots, and if they're successful and we want to find ways to extend them until we can find permanent or long-term grant funding, then they might be an option for that. So,
question about the opioid settlement. So if other jurisdictions are also getting similarly, probably smaller pots that aren't enough to make a big difference each year, but it's still, a good chunk of change. Is there a potential for partnerships with Mukilteo or other neighboring cities to combine our dollars to have a bigger impact?
yeah, I think that's a great idea. Right now we've really only met with the county and their structure and their opportunities to engage with them. And there's a couple other cities that are also attending those meetings, but I haven't asked specifically what other cities are doing or thinking, but that might be an easier pathway to partner with smaller cities that have similar issues. So thank you. Okay. I also just wanted us to be mindful of the fact that we have a sparse amount of detox and treatment facilities, not only in our city, not only in our county, but our entire region. And as much as we want to help people, and as much as sometimes people aren't ready to be helped, even when we are, it's difficult at best to get people to treatment and detox that can be funded through the funding sources that they have. So, we're going to continue to learn more, try and bring more opportunities, and we don't know if additional treatment facilities will want to come to Everett, and so that might be something as well that we'll keep you informed of. And then the fentanyl crisis is real, and unfortunately what we're learning, or what I briefly learned, if you're deeply into the fentanyl addiction, then you're not yet even ready to think about next steps. You're thinking about how to maintain your high. And so that is a really kind of, in my mind, a sad place to be. And so it also is really affecting our residents and our businesses. People feel scared. People are seeing things that they don't want to see on the streets, and we're having a lot of negative effects from that we hear. So I just wanted us to say that out loud and remind people to not take any medication, don't eat things that you don't know where they came from, and take good care of your children. So. kind of turning to the next bucket, you may recall that we've had a Hot Meals Coalition for several years. It did spark out of the Community Streets Initiative, and it continued to evolve from about 2016 to 2000 present. And last year alone, they served about 9,000 meals at 12 different locations. And I think I've mentioned before how they just really stepped up during COVID to ensure distribution of food, masks, hand sanitizer, water, and they just were a really remarkable organization. For 6 years, we've had a contract with an independent person that provided some of the coordination and helped with some of the grant writing and the grant requirements. In 2023, we feel really privileged that the Volunteers of America, who is a leader in food programs, both food banks and food distribution, is willing to step up and provide that coordination. And so we're going to move forward with that. And it will give us opportunity, it will give them, the food, it's not us, they're them. It will give them a greater opportunity for less expensive food, right? More coordination to get reasonable prices and such. Yeah.
So just to clarify, so these 12 locations are all in Everett?
These are the 12 locations in Everett.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank
That
you.
choose to be a part of the coalition.
Okay,
There could also be distributors of food that aren't part of the coalition or
Okay.
who have been invited to be part of the coalition and who choose not to.
Okay.
And so it's been a tool that we've used in the past to try and invite people to use best practices, to invite people to have programs indoors as opposed to on our streets.
right.
Because sometimes some of those programs were magnets for other dangerous behavior and
Yeah,
things
the
like that.
Salvation Army had issues with that, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and they, and some programs have eventually had to choose to
Right.
close down. So,
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
yeah. And meal programs have evolved over the years. What started as a kind of a church program to build community and to provide maybe for some of the people that had food scarcity or who were lonely and wanted community, and now it really is a homeless response to try and ensure that everybody gets a meal. So it's changed in population quite dramatically, and then therefore, the programs haven't necessarily, they've tried to evolve as well to try and address that. And I don't think it's easy all the time, so, yeah.
Who are some of the other partners and funding sources for the coalition?
The city of Everett provides human needs funds, and then for the last several years, they've had a FEMA grant. So, yeah. Hopefully that will continue also because the Volunteers of America is well-versed in FEMA grants, so. Okay, the next one is overnight shelter. And so, again, thanks to the ARPA allocations by council, we have continued to utilize pallet communities as a viable, non-congregate program. The first one being Everett Gospel Mission, and you may recall that the reason we were able to launch that program originally is because we had a state grant from Department of Commerce. We got a little bit of money from the county as well, and for the last 2 years, 2021 to now, July of 2021 to now, those funds have been able to support the program. Those funds are going to end, and by hopefully June or July, we'll be coming back to you with contracts to start using our city ARPA funds to pay for the operations of that site.
Is there an estimate on what that would be?
Well, we're in the process right now of revisiting the management plan, because when it was created, we actually hadn't done a lot of management plans, quite frankly, and Commerce had a lot of their own requirements for what you could and couldn't do, so the management plan was based on the funding source. So our teams are really meeting to talk about what's working, what's not working, what does EGM need, what does the city need, how can we make this the program that they want it to be, that we want it to be, and then how much is that going to cost? So those conversations are in the thick of it right now, with, again, hopes that the contracts can be drafted in May and be signed, sealed, and delivered hopefully by June.
Great. And then ARPA expenditures sunset in 2026, so then what?
Yeah. Then what is the question? Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. We've known that all along, right?
You know, I think it'd be ideal if there were more grant opportunities by then to help address this issue, and we'll certainly be looking under all the rocks for those. But when all else fails, then we, as a city, need to prioritize funding, you know, the entire budget and how much funding we're able to allocate to this. But I'm hopeful there'll be some outside source funding too.
Well, and I also know that we have new funding coming from the federal government, new funding coming from the state. Our county has new taxes. They also understand that what we're creating, we want to have be sustainable. So, you know, again, sometimes I'm a wee bit too optimistic and Pollyanna-ish, but we're having, you know, we're gonna have ongoing conversations around shelter, and even, you know, what are the city's allocations for certain affordable housing dollars, and what can we leverage, and so we got to get the program started, and then next year, I bet, right, we'll start focusing on sustainability and keeping them going. Oh, I was like waiting, like, oh yeah, I'm next, okay, sorry. The second one is the Faith Family Village, and that is at the location at the Faith Lutheran Church out on Madison. I think you recall we had congressional appropriations, about $243,000 allocated back in 2021 and for 2022, and we still just are getting the final signing of the agreements. The agreements changed 3 times even since they sent us the first one, so we feel like we have the final one, and it is being routed, and we have permission to begin thinking about site development and ordering the pallets and getting that ball rolling. Again, our staff has been working with Faith Family Village, our Faith Food Bank, and Interfaith Shelter to talk about the management. Well, I guess they've already established the management plan, but the financial plan and ensuring that we have the proper contracts in place. So again, that's something else that will come to council. And then the third one is the VOA Women and Children's Community. That is still awaiting a land use application to be finalized. Volunteers of America is finishing the management plan, and once that's done, then it will go through our land use application process, and then once that's sure to be finalized, then more of the site development will happen. The pallets that we need for that site, we've already purchased, and they're in storage, but we are looking to add a Connex box for storage and a bathroom, restroom area, and a community space. So there'll be a few other additional purchases. Again, probably over the threshold, so you will be asked to sign those. And then I think, as you know, the county has got 2 different shelter projects in Everett that they are talking about. What we know about the Days Inn, former Days Inn, the sign is down, it is now a closed former hotel, that is currently in, they have I believe they've selected a provider or have had an RFP out for the mitigation or the remediation that has to be done because of the contamination in the building. And so that's first step. Once that gets done, they're also working on RFPs for finding a service provider and a project or a property manager. So the city meets with the county now on a monthly basis. That started in late February, so we've met with them twice to get updates on that project. And then the second project that they are in the process of doing community outreach is for them to determine if they would like to buy the Hope Covenant Church, and that, our understanding is that would be for the relocation of the shelter that's currently at the UCC church. That UCC location was never permitted. It was never a desired location. The building really wasn't suited for this long-term shelter use. And so that is what we know. And then they also need a place for the emergency cold weather shelter. So in our meetings, they've shared with us their outreach plan. It's going on this week. We're waiting for next steps, and once we get more information, it will come to us in the probably land use application process. And then we'll know more about exactly what they're planning. We will also want a management plan that really clarifies the safety, the security, the criteria. I just will say, like, we believe if a shelter is created in a way that provides enough supervision, enough rules, that the managing agency doesn't allow for behaviors that can be impactful to the community, that we do have some ability to provide fencing and lighting and things that also can provide barriers, good outdoor space on the site for people to be able to not have to leave. And access to be able to leave, right? An ability to get on a bus route and things like that. So we'll see. I could just, it's not our project, and it's more to come.
Yeah, do you know the schedule of the, I know there's a meeting tonight, and there's supposed to be one more, I think, maybe Friday. Have you,
I saw on Facebook that they were Monday and Wednesday evenings, Friday at noon, and then Monday,
oh, a fourth one, okay, great,
Monday of next week. All at the Hope Church.
okay, great.
I don't think the Friday or Monday location's been confirmed.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for the condition, for the use permit, would that be something that would come before council, or is that just through the planning department for them to review?
Well, the land use application comes in, and then if there had to be a use permit, then that would be something that the planning director would oversee. So it would not come, the site is zoned allowable for a shelter.
Okay.
I think the legislative, so there isn't a legislative requirement. I think certainly council members, and I've heard, can request the county come and provide information about the project, provide their management plan, et cetera, and we're in process to get that scheduled with the county for those that are listening and watching, and so I suspect that will be soon as well. But in terms of a legislative action in this location, there would not be one within our current ordinance that we have.
Is there any way for council, I know some council members are concerned about what would be allowable at the space. Is there a way that we could voice those concerns or pass those along?
Well, actually, our land use code also really delineates what, I read my Everett News today as well, and the part about them distributing air conditioners to residents would not necessarily be something our code would allow. Our code would allow services on site for the individuals that are on site receiving services. It wouldn't allow for anyone else to come in and get services. So again, we haven't got the land use application. I learned my information from my Everett News in that that really specific detail that was news to me this morning.
Sure, yeah, and that was also news to me as well. I just want to make sure that the folks listening are clear on what the city's role is in Hope Church and what the county's role is, because I think there's been a lot of confusion that the city has more of a role in decision-making than we do.
We don't. I mean, they're just like any other organization that would come to the city. Oftentimes what happens is you get an idea, a concept, like this would happen for us. We get an idea, a concept, we kind of vet it around, and then we find a location, and then all of a sudden we're like, ooh, maybe this will work. And then we go, okay, the first thing we need to do is go out and talk to the community or the council member, and talk to the community and get their feedback and input, so that then you build a program based on all of those factors combined. Then you bring forward a land use application and a management plan so that you have everything clear, so then we can respond to it for if we need additional conditions or, additional fencing or different lighting or, a different criteria for entry or,
Great. Yeah, I wanted to double down on what you had said earlier about a site plan and whatnot, and from the research and studies that I've done, when Nicholsville first came out, when Tent Cities first came out in Seattle, they were actually really successful because the people that lived there had to come up with their own code of conduct, and they had their own stake in making sure that they were able to stay. And so just those rules and those guidelines that everybody decided on together and abided by made those first like 3 or 4 tent cities actually really successful. But then when it started moving away from that model and having it more of having it be less oversight of code of conduct, that's when things started getting a little bit off track. So I'm hopeful that with the site, I know this county's been working really hard to reach out to the community, and they have another meeting tonight, and so I'm hopeful that they're able to share preliminary ideas and then use that as a base model to gather input from the neighborhood. One of the concerns I've been hearing is foot traffic in and out, and the county had shared that they're considering putting a fence up along Rucker so that entry for folks would only be on and off Evergreen, which would limit in and out traffic off of Rucker and off of the neighborhood side of the site. So I think that's pretty helpful for folks that are listening to know about as well.
Thank you. The next bucket is the day shelter concept. Again, started back with the Community Streets Initiative. I know Councilmember Tui, you've brought it up several times. And Council has allocated some money to try, from ARPA, to explore the opportunity for a day shelter location. We started in meeting with different providers who work with unsheltered individuals to understand kind of what the amenities would be needed. We created some vision of a pie in the sky, you know, if it was perfect and we could do everything. And then we really scaled it down because we only have a finite amount of money, a finite amount of time, as well as we want to be successful. We want to have it small enough that it isn't hugely impactful to the community, or impactful to the community, I shouldn't say hugely. And this has all been done in a very short amount of time. And I think that we had shared that the Catholic campus on 2600 block of Cedar continues to be a possible location for that. It's a vacant, basically Catholic campus that the Archdiocese is interested in having, the father of the church, I should say, is interested in being able to fulfill their mission of continuing to help vulnerable populations. And if he can prove to the Archdiocese that it's needed and it's successful and that it's part of their mission and they can have their congregation be a part of helping support it, then it'll be a win-win. And the services could include, you know, a shower trailer, a restroom, opportunities for service referral. I mentioned case managers could potentially be there, or any kind of, one of the service providers is Mercy Watch, who provides some medical support, and so that's another idea. As well as the campus has a commercial kitchen, which is very rare in our community for meal preparation. And so those conversations have been going on. Our process will include, again, neighborhood outreach, understanding the land use regulations, going through a land use application process, doing a really good management plan that includes the security and safety and the necessary amenities to make sure that the neighborhood doesn't have any impact. So those are kind of the next steps. If we're successful in all of this, again, we will come back to you with contracts for rental of space and service provision. I already spoke to this, so I actually don't need to continue, but I just wanted, the encampment response was one of our buckets. And I talked about our interdepartmental teams working together, and then also just wanted to make mention that oftentimes some of our challenges aren't ours, whether it is DOT property or it is some kind of issue that we don't have the easy ability to take care of. So I'm just kind of try and bridge those relationships and try and create new processes and systems to address that in partnership. So. Education and advocacy continues to be important as people the complexities of the challenges that we're facing right now are really hard for people to grasp. And each and every project, person, program, challenge has nuances, and that is really hard to teach people. So we're trying to make sure we have we updated our website, and we're trying to make sure that stays relevant so people can look to see what we're doing. We also really want to support the mayor's public safety concerns and the intersection of our law reforms and how that's impacted the individuals that are living on our streets, and as well as that void I talked about for the mental health treatment and services. We also, I think you may be aware that we've brought to the Safe Communities Committee a couple ordinances that are new tools to assist with ensuring we have more tools. I would ask that maybe that becomes one of our topics for the next meeting that y'all have about the service buffer, service facility. Thank you. Service facility buffer zone. I understand that it's going to be controversial because some people really will want it and other people maybe really won't. And what I'm learning from the experience we had at the pallet shelter about the businesses and their impact and their appreciation of having a tool so that they didn't have as much impact. And I also know that the EGM is really thankful because their individuals that are living in those shelters don't have as much pressure, or there's not people coming to that area to, prey on our vulnerable populations, which also unfortunately does happen if we don't have, proper security and good programs. So that's.
Can I just add one more thing? The facility service buffer zone ordinance that was discussed at the Safe Community meeting will come back to the Safe Community meeting the end of the month. And then, as Julie is suggesting, perhaps that's also a topic for this committee. So something to think about for the agenda for this committee.
And I don't even know that we have provided a draft. I think it's still in draft form to be finalized as a draft. So that's where that sits.
Yeah, it's going to take some time
Yeah.
to really continue to talk through this, I think, with not just our council, but some of our partners as well, who could be impacted by this, so.
Great. So I had listened into the last meeting, so I had heard that it might come before council April 12th, but it sounds like it's going to come back to committee first for further discussion and then to council. Is that
That's right.
correct?
It'll-
Okay.
So, yeah, so I think the next discussion will be the 26th of April at the Safe Community meeting. And then if this committee also wants to entertain discussion on their agenda, it'd be that first Wednesday in May.
Okay, thanks.
So nothing to council prior to that.
Let's see, I'm behind my, did I do, let's see. Okay. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to also let you know, in regard, just, I guess, I don't even know if it fits under this slide, but it's pretty cool because we were able to get a grant from Association of Washington Cities to enable us to create a new app. Well, actually, to build upon an awesome app that one of our crime analysis created for tracking for our COET team. And so our IT program, our IT department is working with that staff person to expand that. So our case management and our MHPs will have an opportunity to have a better tracking system for shared data and then also for reporting out. So that's, and then we also, the other piece is that the tools for prevention and supporting of our businesses, and our department recently took that crime prevention through environmental design training to help be a resource. It used to be something our police department was always able to do, but we know that, they're challenged with staffing, and so we're trying to help support them and go out and support our businesses and kind of learning new ways to make sure that they're safe and so forth. And then our team is also doing some outreach on their own to businesses, where our social worker team and our homeless response coordinator are kind of doing some door knocking to different businesses to hear about their experiences and impacts and learn a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish.
Great. For the app, I was curious if that's integrated with the C-Click Fix app in any way?
It's funny you say that because at first I was like, well, not yet, no, but then just today, there was an idea of how we could integrate C-Click Fix, but they're separate, yeah. This kind of goes back to the community development side of the house, and just a reminder of kind of what they do and which funding sources that they're responsible for. A reminder that they do have a Citizens Advisory Committee as required by HUD that understands what the needs are of the community, makes the recommendations, and then that's what's brought forward to the council for action. And then, like I said before, they do all of the monitoring and compliance and contracts, as well as the environmental reviews for the state and federal programs. And I already spoke about CHIP, so, and then just an intersection again with how we hope to work with planning and economic development on the affordable housing side and those that are income restricted and such. So, and I guess that's it.
Julie,
You've already asked
do you
for
mind if I add one thing? Another topic at the Safe Community meeting was I'll make sure I have it right, the public consumption of controlled substances, which again was discussed as another tool in the toolbox for us. And that will be, there will be a briefing next week at council on the 12th. No ordinance is moving forward at this time, but we felt that it was timely to brief the council not only on our possible ordinance that we may move forward in the future, but there's some state laws proposed in the legislature right now. And so we wanted to have a conversation or share with council what the status of that would be as well. So that will be on the agenda, again, only as a briefing, with no ordinance linked to it at this time.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate the update. You have I get two questions pretty often, and one of them is, what's the city doing about homelessness? And so this will be a great way to direct people to a comprehensive overview of all the good work that we're doing. The second question that I get fairly often is, how are we measuring success? And I think folks see, I see it as a pipeline, that there's folks coming into homelessness and there's people exiting homelessness. But at any given time, there's still people who are experiencing homelessness. So what are some ways that the city is tracking data on the number of people who are assisted, and what are some ways that we're measuring success?
Well, the Power BI is our primary source for how we've been tracking who our social workers engage with, and they have a lot of different variables that they keep track of, treatment, access, housing, just all of those rejected services, not interested, and that's how we will continue to be able to show progress. Number one, we also don't have a lot of staff to be able to have an analytical mind to create tracking systems within the community development team. And it's very hard to know if we're having success when the problem just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And we keep running into barriers for even, strategies for success. So to me, a success would be if we can do everything on this presentation that I just shared with you.
Thanks. I was also curious, especially regarding the policies to approach addressing homelessness. How have people with lived experience with homelessness been involved in coming up with ideas or solutions?
Well, we've really relied on our nonprofit partners when we were creating these strategies, that we worked with them to be the voice. And then now that we have more social workers in the field, we can certainly use, our social workers have been our primary source of direct information, and the encampment response team. And we have a lot of people that have direct interaction, but we haven't had any formal come in, here's an idea, will this work? We have so many needs, right? We have so many things that we should and could do if we had resources. So we're somewhat limited.
And just a shout out too for the human needs grants and supporting organizations that are already doing the work. I think every time that list comes through, I'm just have a little cheerleader moment because everybody's doing such great work. So those are my questions. Councilmember Toohey?
No, I got most of my answers, our questions answered. And I just want to thank you, Julie. I mean, this is a lot of work, lots of different lots of different things you have in the kettle, and but we know that it takes just about everything to make it work, because everybody is just a unique person that's out on the streets, and they have unique needs as well as what they'll accept, and we just have to keep trying to match them up with the right kind of fix. So thank you for all that.
Yes, thank you, Julie. So next up on our agendas is priorities and future agenda items discussion. And so, of course, my screen went black. Unhelpful computer. So I wanted to talk more about earlier this year during our council retreat. Council members talked a lot about what our priorities are for the year, and then those got sorted into buckets. And for the Health and Human Services Committee, the list that council came up with was addressing concerns around addiction being a requirement for services, tenant protection and rental registry, and then administration identified mental health, addiction, childcare, advocacy, and shelter or temporary housing as priorities. And then I will log into my computer. I see a lot of alignment as well with the housing choices for all mayoral directives that Mayor Franklin shared at her State of the City address, including increasing the housing supply at all price points, addressing affordability for middle-income housing, mitigating displacement and gentrification, and sustaining and increasing shelter options with services and support for our unsheltered population. So hearing some of the initiatives that are coming through the pike that it's already being done, what are some things that council can support you on, and what are some things that you would like to see our committee address over this coming year?
I think that, to my point at the beginning, how some of that housing stuff falls into quality of life, some of it falls into infrastructure, some of it might fall under health and human services, and that's, I think, some of the work that you all are going to have to try and help us to figure out. Right now, my division is really focused on the work that I just shared with you and getting those contracts up and running, and also really, I'd really hoping that we can find that ordinance, move that ordinance forward in a positive way, to be able to provide that security to our residents and our businesses that are maybe around future shelter locations. Seems really important to me for a lot of different reasons. So.
And you've said this to me more than once, Julie, but it's a balanced approach. So it's making sure that as we're providing more opportunities and options for those of greatest need, we're also providing some security and safety and confidence within our neighborhoods and our business community that where we're locating these won't be impactful to them. It will be a benefit to them as well. And so the facility service buffer zones, I think, is the ordinance you're referencing, as that does move forward. I think it's really important to provide that balanced approach. You've said that.
Yeah, and just hearing the complaints that we get around different places, it's ongoing. It's never ending. So. Other than that, I was hoping you guys would have that conversation so that then we could better inform you about future work that may be coming in the future, so that we know what on this you want. What's priority, yeah.
Great. Councilor Tui, is there anything top of your list you'd like to tackle?
Well, I am, and I don't want to add a lot to the staff because that's a very full plate, but I'm really curious about the childcare picture, and how if we had, I don't know where we start with that, but I know how important that is for enabling moms to work and all that kind of stuff, so that they don't become homeless as a parent. And so I'm not sure how we would dig into that, but obviously understanding what the resources are and what the need is, and looking for some solutions that way. So, I mean, that's just one thing that I think would, that we haven't really touched on yet, but I would like to see if there's something we could do there.
Great. Yeah, I think I'll never stop advocating for more childcare, that's for sure. You know, besides the dollars that come with funding actual childcare, I think there are some regulations around in-home daycare, childcare facilities, and that might be too stringent on allowing that.
And just a reminder that we have kind of a placeholder of some of the remaining ARPA dollars that we've heard childcare being important. So that too could be included in that. So to have your support to move forward, a future resolution for something specific to childcare would be really helpful.
Could go towards funding additional slots or capital investments or something along those lines to help with expanding childcare options for folks that are able to do that right now.
And, you know, we could also look at like a grant program for a scholarship program for
Great.
parents, you know, and maybe there is a spot that they can go, but they can't afford it.
Yeah, and I think it is unfair for a parent to start a job and then their first paycheck isn't for like 3-4 weeks later based on like pay periods and all that, but they have to pay for childcare that first day, so that funding that gap just to help them get back into the workforce, I think would be a really great grant program. It's a great suggestion. Also on our list is tenant protections and rental registries, and Councilmember Vogely and I are working on a rental registry, and so that's, when that's in draft form, I can bring it to council or the council committee for discussion, and then after that, I think if council approves a rental registry, then moving forward with tenant protections would be a couple easy stepping stones to work towards that direction, so. That's
Which
the plan
will
for that.
also be an opportunity that I'll bring in some of my other colleagues. So we'll just have to prepare agendas ahead. I mean, you know, let me know when that's going to be so we can make sure the right people are here as well.
Great. And then sure we could hold some placeholders for our other committee member to share some priorities on work plans for the year, so we could probably pick this up again next month. Perfect. Great. Yeah, and maybe we can also start a Teams document as well with just like the calendar for the year and discussion items on each, so we can house them and plan ahead for what's coming down the pike, what's hot topics, what we'd like to chat about at the meetings. If that's okay. Perfect. Great. All right, 2 minutes, anybody else? Then with no further,
I see. I'm just thinking about your suggestion on the Teams chat. I think let's talk further about that, only because even managing Teams channels, the amount we have as a staff, I'm just thinking, is there a different tool? Is Teams the right tool or not? So,
okay, yeah,
and
whatever.
public, and I'm just also thinking about retention with, if there's 3 council members, well, I guess if there's just 3, but anyway, so let's explore further how to best do that
We're
collaboration.
doing something on the PLA committee where we're keeping all the minutes and everything, all the documents are in there, so, and I can look it up
Yeah, I
to see
think
what it's
that's,
called.
I think they're using OneDrive, but anyway, let's
Sure.
figure
I mean,
out.
there's like the SharePoint document that has the upcoming agenda items and discussion items, so something
Maybe
similar
that
to
would-
that, but
yeah.
just for the committee, so that we can, childcare discussion, May, and
Right,
plug it in.
right.
And just
Agreed.
keep track of it.
Right, yeah, we can figure that out, I'm sure, because I think that type of collaboration is so helpful.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. It is 5:59, and we are adjourned.